food desert stuff. So we came, did a great chapel, and we went back to Professor Kern's eighth grade.
God is good all the time.
Okay.
All the time, God is good. Now y'all come back to
Okay,
me
so
now.
you should see a stairwell right in the middle.
God is good all the time.
Upstairs.
All right, thank you. That's more than a cliche. It's a cultural identifier. It's a cultural marker. When someone says God is good all the time, and you respond, all the time, God is good. We want to welcome you here to Drew University, to the Craig Chapel. This is the home of the theological school. And my name is Conway G. Gittins. I am a 2025 MDiv graduate, but I'm still here working with the Black Ministerial Caucus. What is the Black Ministerial Caucus? It is a group of students who are supporting one another and forming a community. The importance of an organization like this, even in a time like this, I always think of my journey here at Drew. When I first came to Drew, you know, I'm Black Baptist Pentecostal, came to Drew, and some of the things were new to me. So much so that after a couple of semesters, I felt like, oh, maybe this ain't the right place. But there were other people who had gone through that learning experience who helped me to get to where I was. And so that's what we want to do. We want to create that community where people, even if this is a new environment, this kind of learning, this kind of theological discourse is new, that they don't have to be afraid of it. Sometimes you just need someone to hold your hand. So that's what we're doing. So we're so glad that you're here tonight. Our former president, Dr. Reggie, wrote a book, and so we are partnering with him to put on this event. And for those of you who are online, who are watching, we welcome you as well. If you want to become part of BMC, is what we call it affectionately, the Black Ministerial Caucus, you can reach out to us. My email, if you just type my name in the Drew email, Conway, it'll pop right up. Or D, her name pops right up. Or Janice, and we'll be sure to help you. We do have a big event coming up at the end of the year. We always do a rites of passage here on campus, and it's a beautiful event. We invite our family and our friends, and there's a lot of crying and celebrating. And so if you are graduating and you are in this group that we were referring to, then please email us so that we can have you prepared for that event. And just so you know, the Black Ministerial Caucus is not limited to African Americans. You know, on this campus we have Caribbean blacks, we have African blacks, and we have African Americans. We're all from one people, all one DNA, and you feel free to join us no matter which part of the globe you got dropped off at. We're all still one people. So at this time, Dr. Jesse Mann is coming, and he's going to take us further on in our event.
Yeah, thanks, Conway. Unlike Conway, I need a text. That's just so I don't stray from the text. This is brief. So a common refrain among academic librarians is that scholarship resembles a conversation. For several years, Reggie Steele and I have engaged in conversation as his scholarship evolved from inchoate ideas to refined thesis to the publication of the book that we celebrate today. I'm grateful to Reggie for including me in this conversation. I've learned a lot about him, about Malcolm, about the Black church, about the challenges facing ecclesial and other communities. It's been exhilarating to watch Reggie's ideas develop and to see him grow as a writer and as a scholar. Our conversations were not always harmonious exercises, but it was in the exchange that clarity often emerged. Reggie spoke with me not only about his ideas, but also about his experiences with editors, reviewers, and publishers. The publication of a book is a lengthy process, not always marked by sunshine and light. But the conversation endured, and Reggie's labor has borne fruit. Yes, in the beginning were the words, and these words have taken on a kind of flesh, or at least ink. Reggie, our conversation will give rise to new conversations with other voices in other rooms, rooms perhaps like this one. So I congratulate you, Reggie, and I thank you. And I trust that our conversation, like your scholarship, will continue on new and glorious paths.
Testing 1, 2.
Testing. So, good evening, everyone. Good evening to my friend, my brother, my former BMC cohort and schoolmate. And we are so honored. I am truly honored to be here today. Forgive my book is a little tattered because I had a sneak peek. I had the opportunity to get a sneak peek from this book. Dr. Steele, I have to say before we get this thing started, I want to thank you for this book. And my reason for thanking you for this book is when I first when I read the title, I was like, ooh. But when I started reading it, I appreciate how you gave us a look at not from a criticism view. So I didn't feel judged when I started reading it, but you gave us a roadmap, a guide to how we should navigate when we come across certain issues. So I thank you for that. So let's get started. We're going to start with our title. And we said that when no one leads the church, it feels both prophetic and it can also kind of feel a little controversial, or not controversial, but I would say uncomfortable. So why write this book? And why this title?
So for me, I wrote this book out of my own personal congregational experiences. Being a preacher in a predominantly African-American congregation, what I've discovered is that whether we call it social and or congregational trauma, when pastors or when churches go or experience moments where there is no congregational leader, then survival modalities emerge. And with that, when there are conflicts between whatever the system that is currently at work and the missional work of the individual, whether male or female, who comes into the next place, it could be a fight. And when that conflict ensues, whether it's harsh or mild, then it disrupts the system. And if the system is disrupted, even with the congregational leader, nobody leads the church. So for me, that's what I witnessed. While my space is predominantly the Black Baptist Church, in conversations with Dr. Mann, who I affectionately call Jesse, he is my third leg of my tripod, my academic tripod. So between talking to Jesse and talking to my good best friend Eric, I found out that these challenges that emerged out of my D-Min dissertation was not centralized to the Black church, but that the implications of congregational trauma, wrestling between leadership dynamics, navigating through survival mode dynamics in the church were universal. So what typically started off for me as a D-Min project, my director's here, emerged into something else, which kind of brought me here to this particular topic. Again, for me, one of the working challenges is we exist in a space where we'll see a pastor's name on the marquee, but no one really leads the church. You know, we'll see ministries engaging in people navigating through, you know, but kind of when the smoke settles and the dust clears, then it's that issue that's always very much present.
Wow. And speaking of which, can you give us a glimpse of you kind of did in a sense from the first question. Can you give us a glimpse of your pastoral experience? Because you describe moments of transition and moments where power struggles surface, and rather than resolve, rather than having a resolution. In your experience, what makes transit such as spirituality kind of dangerous moment for congregations?
Sure. If we can go to the slide, I have a slide. The next one. Next one. Next one. Next one. Yes. Chapter number 1, page number 9. I'll start off with this space. I was another pulpit pilgrim who graced the church but never transitioned from student visa to permanent resident. One of the board members informed me that the church did not know what they were doing. Little did I know that implementing scripture and adhering to the tenets of their constitution and bylaws as a means of congregational development disrupted their church functioning. So again, for me, with my personal experience, I came to a realization that in my specific context, it really wasn't about the Bible at all. It was about our system. And again, when you come in as a new pastor, the goal is how do we, or let's use the Drew language, in what ways do we shape cohesion or congregational cohesion in ways that will foster a sense of collective unity so that our system can mirror something that will be attractive to those who are looking for God in the midst of community. So for that being something that I wanted to do, I kind of experienced some pushback because ultimately, and we'll deal with it, I guess maybe later on, or if you guys get the book, I deal with the implications of family legacy groups, and we'll deal with that later on. But for me, one of the challenges is that when you are trying to come in, not to take over, but to just find the best ways that we can create congregational or social cohesion so that we can see what can work for the betterment of everybody. Sometimes the betterment of everybody is also the deconstruction of the status quo that's already in place. And sometimes the working reality is I would rather maintain my status quo and let us fluctuate than to deconstruct it all and be a lived example of what Christianity could really, really look like inside of a much broader space. So for me, that was my experience. To that point, one thing that I'm grateful, and I speak to people about Drew through and through, I am the quintessential Drew baby. I came here as a regular Black Baptist preacher, and they opened up my head and start pouring some information in, and then they got mad when I didn't want to put handcuffs on my brain. Like, y'all did this to me. You did this. But again, you know, one thing that I do appreciate about this space is the reason why I was able to bend and not break is because the space allowed me to take my trauma and turn it into research. I don't necessarily know where I would be now, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, if I wasn't able to take those examples and look at it as case studies for psychosocial trauma in Black church. So for that, I thank my Drew family for allowing me to remain sane and to take it and create an academic or educational gumbo in ways that other preachers and pastors who I personally know left churches, are no longer preaching. Even left churches where I've served and had to navigate through mental and emotional therapy behind the congregational experiences. So for that, I am definitely indebted to Drew for that.
Thank you. Thank you for that transparency and in that much needed dialogue, because it is truly an important topic. So it is my prayer that your transparency will resonate with others who are in your position. So we're going to shift a little bit. So while I was reading, I was struck by your decision to engage Malcolm X and the Islamic pilgrimage as your theological conversation partners. Why Malcolm X and the necessary companion of this work, rather than the Christian example?
Okay, let's go to another slide. Next slide. Yes, okay, so I'll start off here. I seek to look to the lived experiences. This is the introduction, and whatever those Roman numerals represent. My mind isn't there. Y'all forgive me, praise the Lord. So I seek to look to the lived experiences and encounters of Malcolm X during the periods of pre-Hajj and pilgrimage as an example comparable to the problems in the Black Baptist Church surrounding issues relating to tensions concerning systems of understanding, practice, and social behaviors assessed as oppositional based on the singular group's desire to maintain power and control. For me, Malcolm was the best example to use because we got to work an opportunity to see his life lived out loud. Because Malcolm, for me, was an outsider to the Christian space, but still someone who still navigated through oppositional ethics, someone who still was very, very impacted by one school of thought that allowed him to appear oppositional to one group of people, and then another school of teaching changed the trajectory by how he not only saw himself, his faith context, but even how he interacted with people. For me, he was the best example to see how transformation can be experienced up front and out loud. And so for me, I chose to use Malcolm not as a mode or as a sense of trying to inform Christianity. I say this in the book. I didn't use Malcolm to try to inform Christianity from an Islamic lens. But I wanted to literally kind of utilize Malcolm to critique how ethics are operated and how they are lived out. For me, the grounding space of everything that rests at my book is really not theology, it's ethics. And the challenge for me in the church is not just in our ability to know Jesus, but to have a lived expression of Jesus that mirrors our interpretation of who Jesus actually is. And with that being the challenge, Malcolm, even as a preacher in his own right, although he may not have been a Black Baptist preacher, as the national minister of the Nation of Islam, we had a working opportunity to see how transformation can be lived out in ways that are applicable to some of the similar challenges that cross over our religious and our theological lenses.
Thank you. Just for the record, for being a former Druid, I knew you was going to say that. I just had to ask the question. No, I did read it, and I understood it, but I just wanted to broaden that, get a clearer understanding why Malcolm X. So in the book, you mentioned it earlier, you refer to the Family Legacy Group, the FLG. Explain what the Family Legacy Group is.
Sure. So the Family Legacy Group, the FLGM, whatever the acronym is that we navigate through that space, speaks to a group within the organization. The group is not necessarily blood tied, but they work as a representation of a network of individuals within the church who wield power. Typically, from my experiences, the Family Legacy Group in a historical Black Baptist church emerged during seasons of pastoral transition. Typically in the Baptist church nowadays, when the pastor either vacates by way of death, by way of being fired, or way of being retired, there's anywhere between a 2 to a 3.5 year gap before another pastor is elected. And it's during those waylay moments in the Black Baptist church that somebody has to assume some type of leadership. So in those moments, leadership is either appointed, or oftentimes through the lens of the Family Legacy Group, those leaderships emerge out of a collective group of individuals who either already wield influence, just based off of the legacy of how long they've been there, or either they wield influence respectfully because they have the deepest pockets. So if you're the group that's paying the bill, then you're the group who's governing the will. You know what I'm saying, to a certain degree. So those or those typically are the ways in which family legacy groups emerge. When you come into a church, every church, again, no matter what your denominational structure is, every church has appointed leaders and every church has assumed leadership. So those individuals, more so who are a part of the assumed leadership role, represent the family legacy groups in the church.
Awesome. For everyone who has not purchased the book, I found this portion of the book, Learning About the Family Legacy Group, to be helpful. It is a very helpful tool in how to navigate through that, and I hope that you will find it as helpful as I did. Thank you. So we've recognized the problem, and we're going through the process. Now we're kind of coming to that side of how do we fix this? On page 100, you kind of give us a glimpse. So I just wanted to ask you, as if you didn't write the book.
No problem. So
how do we fix this?
So fixing the problem, well, first off, let's identify what the problem is, because that's one thing we didn't clearly state. A working identification of the problem that I share in the church speaks to periods of pastoral transition. The emergence of family legacy groups in this particular system that's seemingly put in place. And then the challenge that we have inside of the book is when a newly elected leader comes in who has a different methodology of ministry, they come in and then that space is now antithetical to what has now developed as the status quo that exists by way of the family legacy group. So that's the problem. And it's this tension that happens. Because again, the working issue that I choose to highlight is the struggle between power dynamics in the Black Baptist Church. So in identifying power dynamics as a problem, how then do we fix the problem between new pastors and those who are already in place? I find out, again, looking at Malcolm X as the protagonist for my book, I found out that teaching is the most prominent tool of transformation inside of the space. Can we go to the next slide? The next slide. Next. Continue. 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 Continue.
We've covered it all.
Continue. Yes. So I have it in chapter number 3. Chapter number 3 deals with teaching as a tool for transformation. I put here the purpose of a learning environment should be to empower individuals rather than merely disseminating information. So again, for me, teaching is the quintessential tool. Again, looking at Malcolm X as a working protagonist, an example of how this transformation worked out. Just to give you a little history about Malcolm X. Malcolm X, by the time he came out of jail, was a student under Elijah Muhammad. So a lot of Elijah Muhammad's teachings by way of the Nation of Islam was kind of antithetical to a traditional Sunni Islamic understanding of what religious practice should be. So what grounded a lot of the opposition that people experienced with Malcolm, I believe, is because Malcolm was taught wrong. So ultimately, his ethics or what he lived out was a byproduct of what he was taught. So by the time he was excommunicated from the Nation of Islam, he connected with an Islamic teacher by the name of Dr. Yusuf Swarby, who was a Sunni Muslim who taught him proper understanding of Islamic teaching. And that particular understanding reshaped or contributed to the reshaping of his whole life, so much so to where when he went to Mecca and he encountered these working social exchanges by those who were white Muslims, because again, there was a working understanding of whiteness that was germane to the social construct of America, that the Nation of Islam had one specific interpretation of how they would reflect and associate with white people. White people were devils, no matter if they sided with him or not. When he got excommunicated and he connected with Dr. Swarby, and Dr. Swarby was able to teach him certain things that went against his foundational learning and understanding, then the light bulb came on. When he went to Mecca and encountered and interacted with these individuals of a foreign hue, but saw that their ethic towards him was different. In his autobiography, he says that, and I'm paraphrasing, I have to reframe or reimagine, how I see things, because I'm now eating and drinking and praying with people with white skin and with blue eyes. So for me, his experience in Mecca only was a lived explanation of a taught encounter that he had with Dr. Swarby before he went over there. So for me, the initial solution to fixing some of the congregational problems, in my humble opinion, has to be based on teaching. Number one, it has to be based on teaching. Number two, in chapter, I think it's chapter 4 of my book, I believe the chapter 4 is called Right Belief and Behavior for Congregational Leaders. Again, what was very interesting for me about the lived experiences of Malcolm X, that is so apropos for the Baptist Church, with his encounter with Dr. Swarby, is Dr. Swarby did not allow Malcolm's resistance to something new, to a new ideology, to a new understanding. He did not allow that to cause him to shift, his working space. So as congregational leaders, whether we're the pastor, whether we're the teacher, when you have people who are coming in and they have to navigate through that teaching component with shifting, it is valuable. Not only that teaching is a great component, but even the behavior between the teacher to the student has to be one that creates a space, again, where we're not just disseminating information, but we're actually creating spaces where people can learn.
Great, good answer. Speaking of which, I'm sure many of us, I know I'm curious, How did you go from being a thesis writer to an author?
Okay, so that was kind of difficult, and that was kind of different, because when
Is that Drew?
it's the Drew.
It's Drew's fault.
It's Drew's fault. Tonight we're blaming everything on Drew, the president, the faculty, Terry, Ty, Laura Curran. We're blaming everybody today. No, but all jokes aside, when you are writing a thesis, when you're writing an academic thesis, no matter what academic program you're navigating through, myself, I work through the DMin program. When you're writing an academic thesis, from that lens, you're writing a paper with the sole focus on, of course, discovering a problem, but then finding ways to best express and explain how other authors who align with your thought process, how their writing impacts your thought process. And then at the end, you'll get a working opportunity to say, oh, I also think A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. But nobody really cares about what you say. That's not the case. That's not a bad thing. It's just the formation of academic writing. It is what it is. When you're navigating through a manuscript, it's no longer your words about somebody else, but it's your words about what you say, because people are more concerned with your words. So taking some of the things that I referenced in my dissertation and kind of changing the language a little bit to create a space to where I'm not saying this. And by the way, Dr. Laura Kearns supports this premise by saying blah, 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 where I'm saying this and then I'll say, and she supports me. So my voice now becomes the voice of authority in a manuscript, where my voice in an academic or a thesis space, it plays a more subordinate or supportive role initially in this formation.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I don't have any more questions.
All right.
But I do, before I open this up for our audience, I do want everyone to please take an opportunity, if you have not obtained your copy. Dr. Steele, he writes not only as a pastor, but as a theologian and as someone who understands the real dynamics and that shapes congregational life. And it is truly a book that you can reflect, and a book that can help you with, in terms of leadership, when dealing with the family legacy group. And it is not about, this book is not about church failure. It's about transformation. So if you're looking, if you are a pastor or a leader in the church or a member, and a student, a scholar, I encourage you to please obtain a copy of this. And at this time, we're going to open up the mic for questions from our viewers.
If you have a question,
If you have a question, there's a mic in the middle of the floor, and you're welcome to.
Thank you, Dr. Kearns. Yes.
Well, first of all, you know how excited I am to be here, and you're sounding so sociological. It particularly makes me happy. But there were a lot of quotes that you didn't talk about. And so my first question is, what more would you like to tell us before we start asking you questions?
Okay, great question. Yes, there are, now to my producer space, we wanted to make sure that we had more than enough quotes inside of the book to be able to substantiate what we wanted to navigate through. So I tried to find at least maybe 2 or 3 quotes per particular question. I even, in full transparency, because preaching, I can preach with my eyes closed, but sitting in this space is very nervous-some for me. So I literally just tried to still navigate through a space where I would try to kind of free flow my answers, because I had some very good points that I wrote down, because again, I learned how to write and study. So for that reason specifically, we had those quotes available in the book to connect to some of the questions that we had.
But I bet you there's still things
So yes, okay. Certain things that I didn't even have on the quotes that mentally I want to talk about. One in chapter number 3, near the end of chapter 3, I deal with the Jewishness of Jesus, and I deal with the working understanding that if we're going to use teaching as a tool for transformation, and if we're Christians in our religious context, there's no way you can fully teach about Jesus without expressing something pertaining to his Jewishness. Now, in understanding his Jewishness, it does not mean that we need to be Jews to be Christians, but you can't fully grapple with who Jesus actually is apart from his Jewishness. And because that's something that we don't really deal with per se in the black church, I push back in my book against suggesting what the church should look like apart from a fuller interpretation of who Jesus is. Because again, since my book grounds itself on ethics, for those non-professors here at the school, Judaism is an ethics-heavy religion. It's more about ethics than it is about theology. So you can't really fully connect to Jesus unless there is a doing aspect of the word that couples with the hearing aspect of the word. Okay, I'm sorry. We can't fully connect, or grapple with a real understanding of what it means to be Christian if we don't also grapple with the ethical aspect. Because again, for me, our understanding and interpretation about Jesus in the black church context relates and associates Jesus. I can do this with my eyes closed now. It relates and associates Jesus through the lens of a faith context. That's belief. That's not practice. So how do we live out, or again, in our Jew language, in what ways do we best demonstrate a fuller interpretation of being an ambassador of Jesus if we alienate a very ethic-heavy component that made Jesus who he was? Because the reality of the situation is this: Jesus wasn't Christian. Jesus was Jewish. And again, not that we need to become Jewish in our practices, but there has to be an ethical component that matches with our faith dynamic so that we can demonstrate a fuller context, so that when people come to our churches, here's what they can say. They may not have the best choir. They may not have the best preaching, but I left there feeling loved in ways that I've never experienced in my entire life. One of the very interesting things, I have some of my Black Baptist brethren in here, we know respectfully a number of pastors who can't preach if Terry Todd wrote their message and emailed it to them 20 minutes before they had to preach. But they're the most loving people, and they have some of the most filled congregations because people will give you time to perfect your preaching skill if they know that you love them. So for me, it's that ethical component of the lived experiences of the historical Jesus. Because again, we don't have time to deal with the variations between the historical Jesus and Jesus the Christ. But clearly I know that's a whole nother conversation for another room. But what I will suggest is that if we're going to demonstrate the best version of what Christianity in today's context could be, if we're lending to an understanding that Christianity is a working collective space that encompasses who Jesus is, we can't see Jesus just through the sense of congregationalism in theory and faith. We have to see him through the lens of ethics as well.
It sounded so true. He does.
you have any other questions?
Dr. Reggie, thank you. And I can't wait to read the book. So, but I want to ask a question. Your subtitle is Pastoral Leadership in the Formation of a Healthy Church Culture. I love it that you're turning our attention to the formation of a healthy church culture. So my question involves the first part of that, pastoral leadership. Now, I'm eager to hear more about the family legacy groups,
group,
right? Yes? And it seems to me in hearing you that there is a lot of unhealthiness that may arise in these moments of transition. Am I right about that?
Yes.
So here's my question. Usually, so many churches, black churches to be sure, and many white churches rely on strong senior pastor leadership to carry the church forward. My question is, are there ways of developing lay leaders? It's about lay leadership. What is the status of lay leadership in healthy churches, as you understand it, that could provide a healthy bridge between pastorates, right? How do we involve lay people in the leadership of church life, particularly in a moment when it seems that the divisions, this basic division between laity and clergy, actually, I think in many places we're seeing a kind of fuzziness develop between lay leadership and pastoral, ordained pastor leadership?
A great question. My working answer to that is twofold. One, a pastor out of the Newark area from the St. James AME Church, named Reverend Dr. William Wiley, told me something over 20 years ago. He said, Reggie, when you finally ground yourself into a congregation where you can kind of grow, my working example to you is to build on your strengths and surround yourself with your weaknesses. Now, my pastor's here. He's actually sitting next to you. So I utilize my encounter with him to answer your question. And I say this as respectfully as I can. My pastor puts on his pants one leg at a time. Okay? He was not the person who in high school got picked on, got chased home, and got his lunch money taken. I use that as a working example because when we deal with the implications of leadership, who you are as a person will spill over into the ways you acquiesce, associate, and encounter with other people. Because my pastor has always been assured of who he is as a person, then it was never an issue when some of us who came up underneath him had skills. He pushed us to preach. He pushed us to teach. He pushed us to go and allow our gifts to make room for us. I say that to suggest that how we allow laity and leadership to work together has a lot to do with the personality of the leader. Because if the leader, no matter how much school they have, no matter how much Holy Ghost they embody, if in their person, if they struggle with identity issues, if they grapple with who I am, and my fear is if you have a talent that I don't, then I'm gonna let you stay right over there in that second row in the third seat to the left. Not because you're not called, not because you're not gifted, but because the acceleration of your gifting challenges my trauma and my issues relating to my own self-identity. So again, I deal with in chapter number 4, right belief and right behavior for the congregational leader, because it's valuable. Because again, what I frame out as the family legacy group is not always a problem. And let me say this just for the sake of the conversation. My only pushback with the family legacy group is when their ideology is sustained beyond its needfulness. Because every church in the space of transition needs somebody to take the reins to ensure that the bills get paid, that the lights stay on. So I'm not demonizing for the sake. So when you read it, you can read through this lens. I'm not demonizing family legacy group members. I'm only pushing back against their created systems of modality when there's no need to fight no more. If we've gotten to a place to where we have a sense of togetherness, then I don't need you working out 8 hours a day. You don't have to do that no more. We're good now. So that's to that point. But to your point, we're able to navigate through a better working relationship between leadership and laity based off of the disposition of the leader. The leader needs to know that, number one, no matter how much education you have, no matter how much charisma you have, no matter how much wherewithal you have, you cannot do it by yourself. And it takes courage, again, to my answer by way of Reverend Dr. William Watley, to build on your strengths and surround yourself with your weaknesses. Now, I'm not really sure how it navigates itself in an Anglo-Saxon church, no matter what your denominational scope is. But in the Black Baptist church, the word weakness is a bad word. It's a very bad word. So the pushback that we have, because again, Methodist churches are congregational. Presbyterian churches work and build by way of their session. So the way their organizational structure is completely different, than the Black Baptist church. But again, with us coming to a working understanding that the pastor, to your point, is looked at as the strength component, then how do you suggest that while I am the strength component, I'm really only strong in A, B, and C? But I need someone just as strong as I am in C, D, and F in ways that I can be vulnerable enough to say I need your help, but still respected enough to where you don't try to undermine me and take the church from underneath me. And so what typically happens is I would rather run the risk of having a defaulty C, D, and E and work the hell out of A and B, because our congregational experiences suggest that my context doesn't provide space for me to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, Terry, you're really good with Christian education. Why don't you pray about serving in that capacity? We don't always have that kind of social freedom inside of our congregational spaces to even give off the impression that I'm not as strong in this area as somebody else is. And then the working reputation, again, of the Black church, which it goes against what I will later on probably just write like a peer review paper on biblical functionality. I'll use this as an example. So all of us are in school, but I like to use the elementary school as a work. I'm wrapping up. I like to use the elementary school as a working example. So there's a principal, there's a vice principal, you have teachers, I just very generic. Teachers, custodial work, and security all work inside of a public school together. And in that space, the difference between the principal and the head custodial worker is the job description. My job description suggests that because I'm this, then these responsibilities acquiesce themselves to that job description. The challenge in the church is we create classism and hierarchy inside of the church. So you don't know how important the janitor team is in the school is until they go on strike. Because there's not a teacher in the room that's going to teach for 8 hours and then take out the trash too. Not happening. So to your point, if we teach biblical functionality in the church that aligns itself, I believe, with 1 Corinthians chapter 12 when it deals with the various, parts of the body, then that way hopefully can be a starting point where we can be able to show that you don't have to be this to still be used. Another challenge that I experienced in the Black church, not my own issue, but what I've seen, is because we do not teach biblical functionality in the church. Whenever you feel called to do something great for God, everybody preaches, but everybody's not called to be a preacher. So we have a lot of people who are getting ministerial license that don't even know how to build a sermon, who's not even called. If you cook, be the best part of the culinary ministry that you can be, and recognize that God can anoint you to do that too. So again, so navigating through that lady's situation, the leader needs to understand who they are from a psychosocial disposition. We also need to come to a realization that we need to shift into a more collective space of biblical functionality in our teaching within the congregational space, so that we create value for every area of ministry. So I don't have to be the senior pastor to know that God has something unique for me. Maybe I'm just a person that cleans up when church is over, but I can do it as unto the Lord.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna drink your water since I'm doing most of the talking. Blue fire.
So first off, I want to congratulate you on this event and this accomplishment. I know there's a lot of, hoops that you have to go through. So congratulations, first off. I just want to go back to a point that you mentioned about understanding the Jewishness of Jesus. So my question for you is, do you think the reason why many people remain migrants when it comes to finding a church home or become disassociated with church overall is due to the lack of healthy and positive church culture based off of a fuller or a lack of an understanding of the Jewish tradition of Jesus? In my personal experience, I've seen others, as well as myself, not really get checked up on outside of church by church family. And there are certain red flags that do arise in the church that also push people away, whether that's pettiness between church members, ranging from gossip all the way to the amount of times tithing is emphasized.
So to your point, that's my frat brother Antonio, so good to see you, brother. So to your point, I don't fully feel that the issue with why migrants are having issues with church has to do with the lack of a fuller interpretation of the Jewishness of Jesus. What I have recognized, again, because the church is both an organism, which means we are alive, and we are also an organization. And the way that we frame out church that is true, that a lot of people don't really navigate through, is when people go to churches, they're trying to find their fit. I know nothing about that response seems spiritual in this formation, but I'm trying to find my fit. If I'm a single, male, widowed, and I got 2 children, I'm trying to find a church that has that supporting space for something that resonates with my lived experiences. So one, I believe one of the issues, again, is not fully encapsulated with a lack of a Jewishness of Jesus. People just don't find their fit, and they particularly end up going to a church where they're able to find their fit. And it doesn't mean that one church is better than the next. It's just a situation to where, like, listen, if education is important to me, and if I'm married and if I got children, I love a church, you know what I'm saying, that has a very strong Christian education department, one that's able to work with my children in a way to where they can explain the Bible in the same similar fashion as they explain it to me in my Dell class. Again, that's not about the Jewishness of Jesus. It's more socially as it relates to where I fit. And typically people join churches that answer the question of where I fit beyond the Sunday morning worship experience.
Thank you.
Questions?
We have
Are you- Okay.
Okay. And your brothers are watching.
Okay.
Just to let you know, Dr. Theron Jackson, Dr. Drayberg, and Dr. Timothy McNeil.
Thank you so much. Hey, bros.
And so the question is, how does a pastor identify, mitigate, and reconcile influence that is willed, W-I-E-L-D, or willed, W-I-L-L-E-D, referring to the family legacy group theology?
So read that one more time. I just want to make sure I hear it.
How does a new pastor identify, mitigate, and reconcile influence that is either wielded, W-I-E-L-D-E-D, or willed, W-I-L-L-E-D. And this is in reference to the family legacy group theology.
Okay, so from my experience in the black church, it's obvious. It's not even a situation where it's blind. Like you don't go. You can start candidating for a church, and you can find out why you're candidating who's who. As soon as you go and preach, you know what I'm saying, you'll know who's who. I use for instance. So let's say hypothetically speaking, we have Dr. Jonell Green, and then we'll have I can use him because he's my cousin Lance. He won't feel away. And we have Brother Man. So Brother Johnson is the chairman of the deacon board at Dr. Green's church. But when I get finished preaching, the first person who comes up and says something to me is Brother Man. Man, you did all right, man. Yes, sir. I haven't even spoken to the chairman of the deacon board at all. So again, those individuals who serve as willed or will power inside of the church, they always make themselves, especially if you're somebody that the church may get, oh, trust me, by that second or third time, you know what I'm saying, they'll come in the office and don't even have a key. So they definitely make themselves present in that context.
Great, thank you so much for all of your questions. Dr. Steele isn't going anywhere. We have refreshments for you outside, so you can ask your question in person if you want to. Please feel free to enjoy the refreshments that we have set aside for you. You see on the screen here, for those of you who want to purchase a book, especially if you're online and you're not able to be here right now, the directions are on the screen, for you to do it virtually. His Zelle is there. You can purchase it on Amazon.com or on the publisher's website, and you got the price right there. So Dr. Reggie is going to give us some closing remarks, and then after he's finished, Sister Janice, Chaplain Janice, is going to come with some brief announcements from BMC, and then we'll let you go into the lobby and enjoy the refreshments.
Okay, real quick, thank you again for everyone. Hello? Thank you again for everyone who came out. Also, we have Square, so if you have a credit card, we have credit card access. We want to make sure that you had everything you needed to be able to get a book on tonight. Hallelujah. Again, thank you all so much for your work and opportunity, for being here. Before we leave, this individual did not know that I was going to do this, but navigating through my master's program, navigating through my D-Min, and even navigating through the formation of this book, this person has served as a voice for me in times where I interrupted their writing, interrupted their reading, and they always made time. So I do this even though I know that they're going to actually get the book, but I want to take the time and dedicate this book here, I'll sign it later on, to my good friend. He is my one of the legs of my academic tripod when I navigated through my D-Min. It was Jesse Mann, it was Chris Bozel, and it was Tracy West. So Jesse's here. Jesse, I want to publicly thank you. I would not have made it through any of my programs. I would not have made it with reframing my dissertation into a monogram, a manuscript without you. You have been present for me since 2018. And even though I graduated in 2023, there's not a day that I don't call that if you're busy, you'll call me back. There's not a day that I come up, and no matter what you got going on, you will always stop for me. So thank you. I value you. I appreciate you. And this book is for you, my friend. Again, thank you all so much. This space for me is nervousome. The academic space is, I'm emerging into this space. So being able to fully talk about this is something that I'm working through. I can talk about the church all day long. But again, making sense. I share with you again, I'm not asking you, I've shared this with my cousin Lance. We talk, my frat brother, Craig Johnson. While I would appreciate if 10,000 people purchase this book, I would love it if 500 people read it. Because the value for me is not in the quantity of the purchase, but the value of the work that has gone into this to be able to help. I've read emails to Jesse, and we're going to wrap it up. I've read emails to Jesse where I've had some of my, white Anglo-Saxon brothers and sisters as far as Canada who have responded to my work about a black boy writing about a black Baptist church. So if they can find value, and they're not even a part of my denominational context, then I know that the work that I have is useful. And again, I'll say this to push back because I can. Oftentimes we struggle in the Black Baptist church because we're so accustomed, to popularity, power, and prestige. And if you're not the popular voice, then we don't give value to what you have going on. And let me say this out of the utmost respect. You can have the biggest church in the state. It doesn't mean you know how to help me through the process of transformation. So when you're seeking advice, when you're seeking help, when you're seeking assistance, try your best, brothers and sisters, to connect to the people who've done the work. I have done the work. I may not be the best preacher in the world, although, praise who? Praise God. But when it comes to my research, don't get lost in my usage of Malcolm X and think that this work is not beneficial for the church. Because it's about transforming the church. Just like Dr. Terry Todd said, the second part of it is pastoral leadership in the formation of a healthy church culture. The church culture extends beyond the 2-hour time we have on Sunday morning. So please, brothers and sisters, I'm not asking you to get the book because it's me, because we're family, because I'm your brother. I'm asking you to get the book because everybody in here knows a Wayside Baptist Church. Every church in here has a family legacy group dynamic in your church, no matter how long you've been here. I got friends that have pastored for 15 years, and when Mother Jenkins died, then somebody said, now you're finally the pastor. You mean to tell me they had to pastor for 15 years before they can start pastoring? Again, building a healthy culture is valuable. Please just give me another 2 minutes. Building a healthy culture is valuable. One of the greatest challenges that we have in the black church is we wait until trust is seemingly established for vision to be realized. I use my cousin Lance because he's here. If he got called to a church in 2020, and if the church didn't give him room to start doing ministry for real until 2026, then he's stepping into 2026 with a 2020 vision. How does that work? He's still behind the 8 ball. And God forbid, when the Lord reshapes his thought process and he tries to step into 2026, now that trust has been established, because it's not what he told them in 2020, he got to start all over again. Church is the only organization that does that. The only one. So we want to build healthy communities. Let's do better. And it doesn't start just with the pastor. It starts with the people who serve. If you are a part of the family legacy group in your church, help your pastor. If they won't believe him, buy into him until they buy into the ecosystem. All right? Again, thank you all so much for coming. We'll turn this over to the chaplain of the BMC.
So hello, I am Chaplain Janice Beauchamp. I have to tell you, I'm quite moved by your book. I haven't finished reading it because I got 4 classes and an intern assignment. But the thing that really struck me was I am relatively new into the church environment, less than 5 years, and have spent 4 years studying leading cultures in organizations. I was quite moved by your assessment of culture and how training, development, learning, and the thing you didn't say is, in order to get to a place, you might have said it, uncomfortableness, conflict, that's the only way you really get to a positive culture. So I would add another group that you should recommend. Anyone who is new to salvation, new to the church journey, this is a good book to read. All right. So I'm here to thank everyone. This was phenomenal. I'm here to also put a plug in for the Black Ministerial Caucus. For students who are graduating May 2026, like me, and like Dee, we encourage you to reach out to us because we have a ceremony, a rite of passage ceremony, and we would love for you to be a part of it. And okay, I'm a marketing person too. And we would like for you to appropriately receive your shawl. If you are a student and Drew, and not graduating, but want a leadership role, want to participate in bringing things to this great organization, or just networking, reach out to us. We need the folks that are graduating in 2027 and 2028 to come to the Black Ministerial Caucus, and let's do some things. And the nice thing about it is you can do it here on campus as a full-time student like me, or you can do it online. There is room for everyone. So a real appeal to have you join us. And let me just stop and say thank you again to Reverend Steele, and also to Dee, because Dee graduated, but she is here leading the Black Ministerial Caucus. So I love you and thank you. So with that, cookies, cupcakes, and drinks are outside, but Reverend Steele, you got another word for us, don't you?
30 seconds back. I want to thank, before we leave, because I don't want to sleep on the couch tonight. I want to thank my ace that, this is our running joke, so it's okay, who gives me permission to talk to my sister Gina when I was going through my chapters, because she don't want to listen. I guess my talking is white noise for her, so she will fall asleep by page number 3. But she still created space for me to be able to do what I need to do. My wife is here. Sherelle, she's in the back. Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Now we can go and get some vittles.